make the sunset? Do you make the bright stars flee? Old crow, time is getting late. I know you've a gift for me. Old bird, I see it in your talons, glittering between the leaves. Friend, I'm swimming in the shallows, you're calling from the deep. And we bide our time, and we shed our skins, and we shake our bones, and we sink like stone, and we crawl through mud till we reach the sky, and we bide our time.
That's the beautiful voice and instrumentations of Glenn Dunn covering a song called Crow by the English band Tongue. Glenn was my first significant teacher as a young adult at art school, a passionate, sensitive and tenacious teacher that gave me, and many others since, true gifts in the form of well-crafted questions that pushed us beyond our comfort zones and helped us to get to know ourselves better so that we had something to make that could contribute back into the culture. Glenn taught with grace and care, and he continues to bear gifts, such as this song, which speaks of the crow, the raven of which is trickster, creator spirit on this land in Jarramother country. This series of podcasts is dedicated to Glenn's spirit of asking young people timely questions. Today's guests are Jashan Singh and Bei. Well, welcome Bei and welcome Jashan.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been lovely to get to know you, to meet you. And,
likewise.
And to get to know you a little more, Bei. You volunteered with us maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Something like that.
Yeah, well before the great COVID moment. And we really connected then and have been connecting since. I thought I'd start by asking you a question that I love to ask people, and that is, and maybe we'll start with you, Bei. Where is that place in the world that you feel most at peace?
Great question. That place is an internal place. It's not a physical place. And that place is mystical. So I have moved around the world quite a lot in my life, and I cannot pinpoint a physical place where I feel at peace or consistently at home. And the place inside is somewhere where I can consistently find through yoga and pranayama to be in a place of clarity and peace and calm. The external world often doesn't offer these things.
And Jashan, where's your place of peace?
There's difference in, I guess, the place of peace and place at ease. I guess internally, as Bei mentioned, that you're more peaceful when you're centered and grounded and you're connected to yourself. But I've lived in city and I've lived in a village and in the nature, because I come from a small town, Punjab in India. But coming 8 years back in Australia, I thought probably moving to the Western world would be a good decision. And after a while, I started to realize that it's a lot of hustle, it takes a lot out of you. You're always pressurized by the society, and there's a lot you need to do to just be at that spot. You're always in that race, and you don't have time for yourself, and you're not at ease. and you do stuff more which you don't even like, and you need to be somewhere proving something to the society. But when I go back to my family, we live in villages. There's not much material involved. They don't have that materialistic richness, but in saying that they are rich from inside, that they have a lot to offer: love, respect, and there's a strong bond in the community, and this relationship. And I feel more ease when I'm around them. I feel more relaxed. I'm more myself, and this actual peace and ease, similarly, coming here at your place in Dalesford, I came from Melbourne, and Bei actually got me here, and lovely to meet you, both of you. Actually, three of you, Woody. It's just amazing experience. Like, it's that life that I would love to live. Like, you can live freely, more at ease, and it's relaxing, not stressful, and it's connecting you to your natural being.
Beautiful. Yeah, that place of the village that you have illustrated a little bit over the last couple of days, and just talking about your family and the cows in the village and the respect for them, and you've also talked about some of the complexes and the interventions of modernity and money into the village, and the pain that causes and continues to cause.
Yes.
But what it sounds like is there is this sense of village that still very much exists.
Sense of community.
Sense of community.
Yeah, I mentioned as an example, giving a farmer protest, I think a year back, not even a year, like probably this protest lasted for 7-8 months, a longest protest in the history. A lot of people lost their lives protesting against the government and the rules which were implemented against farmers. But I guess this sense of bond and relationship, people still come together, and they feel they need to live together to be respected, and to have that they can make a stronger impact to the community and society. It's like back home, talking in a village, like I don't need to have a permission to go someone's house. Like, pretty much they are there, and that person is there, and in need people will come. As my father is pretty like reputed back in the village, my grandfather, my father, our family, and people, if they have their needs or they wants, like I remember growing up as a child, a lot of people who can't afford money and they have to go see a doctor, they would come to our family and ask for help financially, or they need a transport to just drive them to the hospital. So that sense of community is there, and they feel safe around that. Even talking about the retirement home for cows, we personally at our place have 20 cows or even more, and we look after them. We get milk and all our dairy products through them. But once they're retired, once they're not capable of giving milk, or they just get into the older age, they're transferred to the retired home. So we have our family got 70 acres of land, and 2 or 3 acres of land's fodder would be given to that retirement village.
Wow.
So for the cows, and continuously people come there to just look after those cows. There's people serving them. They come at 4 a.m. in the morning or evening, it depends upon, and without any money involved in it. It's just out of love, respect, and they want to serve to the community and living I think it puts them at more ease because they are connected to the nature, and they find that love getting from those animals. There are heaps of examples. Like growing up in a village was something pretty easy. Like I had a very good childhood. I was a naughtiest kid. I would go outside with the kids, and 7 or 8 or probably even more. Like we would play cricket, we had kids around, and like my mom talks about me stealing some wheat from our, like the kitchen, and then I would go to a shopkeeper, give that wheat, and then he would give us some grocery, or like the snacks I would love to eat. So yeah, it's just free. It's totally free. Like there was no money involved, or there was no financial that pressure on you. It's more relaxed. Everything is just available. Like nature has provided us so much. Like my uncles, I have never seen them going to office or something, and they haven't been to school. The eldest uncle have never been to school, but he's one of the smartest guy out there. He knows he can play with tools, with mechanical stuff, with tractors. Even he knows, you can say he's very surrounded with nature. Like he knows how to connect with nature and get the stuff out. He might be very knowledgeable than the guy who's studying some sort of plant study, because he's always dealing with that stuff, right, in the nature, and he knows where to get that medicine or what this plant is used for. So I mean, the more we interact with nature just teaches us ourselves, and we learn a lot out of it.
I'd like to come back to some of the story that you shared yesterday about your uncles and their schooling. But I thought I just might, while we're just staying with community, we talked about our place of peace to start with. Where's community for you, Bei? Where is that?
It doesn't really exist, Patrick. So this idea of being an alien is something I have tried to understand and tried to heal for a very long time. And I come from family that has experienced a lot in the recent few hundred years through war, famine, displacement, time and time again. And the consequence is a lot of trauma and not being able to process that trauma and trying to raise children. We're sort of brought up with the idea of separateness or not being able to trust, and there's a lot of fear. The fear sort of that I was born into and assumed to be the norm, and without trust, there's no ease with another. So sort of this survival anxiety that came with my upbringing, but then was reinforced by modernity in the neoliberal structures. So there was this belief that this is reality, that reality is a life that is full of strife. And I talked about peace being on the inside because the external environment for several hundred years now has not been a very easy one. It hasn't, connecting with the external environment hasn't consistently brought about peace or ease. And so spiritual practices like yoga and meditation has allowed for, I guess, a withdrawal of the senses from the competitive rush of the external environment to a place that is still. And it was by going inside that I first found relief, I guess, from the onslaught. And it was through sort of these practices and then knowing that, it is possible to regulate my psyche so that internally I have some stability, because hooking on to the external pulls and tugs that you kind of have to be involved in order to function in everyday society, really rattled my nervous system, and still does actually. So it was connecting with a place of consistent enough stability, peace, and pleasantness that then allowed me to understand when I meet another who also has enough of that in them, for us to connect at that level of ease, if that makes sense. And then from there, it's possible to build trust, or you just know who you are able to trust. Because the sort of norm, as I have lived it, is interacting with minds all over the world that have preconceptions of how life should be, and to the degree that I fit into it, I'm fine. To the degree that I do not fit into it, then somehow I'm not fine. And to the extent that I can feel that they don't think I'm okay, I feel unsafe. And so then it's been about, well, to what extent can I accept enough of myself to be in the world and feel and know that I'm not accepted, but still be really content enough with that.
What I'm really hearing is that you are building community around people who are sensitive or open to the dispossessions, the trauma, the sort of kind of man-made mass death violence, rather than the ordinary violence of life, of human life, which is about food and relationships to surviving. But just that, because I share that awareness about my old people, at least 700 years of rupture and many more years, but my old people in the 12th century, that's when the enclosures started. Therefore, dispossession and the removal of people from bonded land, where villages, where the sorts of peace is possible that you've experienced, which is so wonderful to have that first-hand relationship to the village, ancestral village, and that continuation. Whereas I think what we share is this, and your rupture from that is coming over to Australia for a whole range of reasons, which I hope we'll hear about. And then sort of saying, oh, well, my kind of sense of peace stands in this village place, which you and I haven't had.
Yeah, it's been, I've had, I guess, little glimpses of it. Now the interest that I have had in observing minds, and of course my own mind, is to what degree does it allow us to have the life that Jashan describes for his upbringing. So I did spend some time with Jashan's family over the course of about 2 weeks, and I have never consistently felt so good and coherent within myself and with my environment. So it is, so for the first time I had an experience that showed me that it's possible to be coherent with your environment and not have to go through a shutdown or like a tightening up or a somewhat suspicion. It's possible to relax just more and more deeply into your environment. The observation about my own mind and its tendencies helped me understand how do I say, how disjointed we could be with our own nature in the way that we operate. So some conversations have been had about acceptance. For example, why is it that we have these ideas that we hold so tightly over how we should live and how someone else should live to such an extent that we would outrightly reject them or punish them? And these are ideas, but we're willing to demonize another and call them the other.
Yeah.
So I sort of bring back the inability to be with each other down to these tendencies of our minds, and to the extent that I had it, and I most definitely had it. I operated in that world, I believed in that world, I had a mind that helped me survive and do well in that world. But every time I operated from that place of separation, which helped me make a lot of money, it would destroy me on the inside somewhat. There's a kind of a pain. So you talk about trying to establish community with people who are a bit more open about where they're at, where we are at with each other, just to observe it, even without acting out our triggers by it. Yes, it is true, and it's very nice to be able to connect with people who are willing to be open. However, I've also come to the belief now, and I'm always working on my belief systems, that unless we have a level of maturity, so a degree of security, then when I interact with another, I'm interacting with their insecurity. I'm not interacting with them. And unless I can interact with someone who has enough of themselves, it's difficult to form community with them and to build something new, or to build anything, because they're always interacting and coming and decision making to protect their insecurity, if that makes sense. And what gives them a sense of security can change depending on what society says is okay. So, but having someone who knows who they are, what they represent, has to have some self-respect. To interact with someone with these qualities, I'm at ease because I know who I'm interacting with.
Sounds like you're seeking community of people who interact or are open to the wisdom of insecurity. Because insecurity is such a fundamental teacher, but if we guard it or protect it and not allow it, like grief and like trauma, then we cut off the possibility of a profound teacher. And I'm quoting Alan Watts in his book, The Wisdom of Insecurity, which when I was maybe a teenager or early 20-something-year-old, that book really spoke to me, because it just literally gave me permission to open to my own insecurities in a culture that didn't want to see me. Like, I think an experience most young people, because they don't have the village. They don't have the village, and the village is about seeing particularly the young people, seeing them in their naughtiness, seeing them in their gifts.
Sorry to interrupt, but this something that people even haven't they experienced at all. Like, they haven't experienced such a community or bond. Maybe they just think that's the life, and they're probably used to that life, and they might behave or react different once they are brought into that sort of environment. Or something might trigger in them that's the life too. There's a different way of looking at life, and I'm pretty sure you weren't raised in that sort of environment, but once you decided, or once you moved, or even Meg or Bei, there's some triggering point that they realize that, oh, there's much more peace in that sort of community or bond or in that relation, rather than running after that society, or just having that pressure of doing something and burning yourself to that extent that you can't even live a normal life.
And many people are running from the ancestral village.
True. That's true.
Because their experience isn't what. Yeah, there isn't ease.
There's no comparison between two lives. They have like my uncle's son. He just recently moved to Canada, and he had a very like different perspective towards life in Western world rather than in a village life. There was a lot of sport to him, even though like in the village, in my family, he had no stress, no worry about anything. He just loved by all the family members. He had that sense of belongingness. But once he moved to the Western world, like now he's in Canada, but he straight away realized that there's some sort of gap missing, and he feel loneliness, and people are selfish. They kind of don't respect or treat him, don't love him. So he found it pretty hard to just manage his stuff over there, like his living and all. So I guess a lot of kids teenagers are just running to Western world to sort of experience that life, and many of them realize it, but they're stuck into that lifestyle that they can't just get out of it so easily. And some of them just don't realize it. I guess it's everyone's their journey, and they know what they're going through. So most of people enjoy. I mean, I'm not judging anyone. There's no judgment involved. But a lot of people find it very peaceful when they're connected to themselves, and saying that a lot of people staying here from 20-25 years cannot still accept this society or community, like the Western world, as they want to go back again, going to that community, and they find it hard coming back. While when I came back from India, I went in this March, and I came back to Australia, I was literally crying all the way. I couldn't, that idea, that sense of separation was there. I knew that world is different, and this world is much more bigger, and the relationship is much more strong, and that relationship again pulls me towards them, like their sense of belongingness. So I mean, it's just about realization, and once you experience that, and then if you're willing to put your all efforts to build that relationship, it takes you much at ease, and you feel really comfortable within. And
one of the major tactics of any form of colonization is to shame, and to shame children for not wearing the right outfit, to shame people for not being educated in a Western sense. The shame of what happened here, Indigenous Australians, for their traditions, their ways of procuring food, their customs, their ceremonies. So wherever the genie of colonization is out of the bottle, shaming follows, and judgment. And one of the things that I'm really aware is the just how the Western education system has created this sense that this is the only legitimate way in which to get an education is the industrial education model or complex. But you speak so highly of your uncles who didn't have that industrial education, and yet their knowledge around land and tools and everything as kind of self-taught engineers and self-taught ecologists and self-taught farmers. Do you want to speak a little to them, and then Bei, feel free to jump in too with what comes up for you in this story.
Sure. So I've seen my uncles like playing around with tractors and stuff. Like they would open. Like I'm a mechanical engineer by by study. Like I've done my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. But if my uncle, on the other hand, just looks at a tractor and he's opening it up like any of the machine, he's pretty skillful. I know the names, but are not practical. Like he haven't visited to a college, like not even for a day, and he still can manage all the stuff required, and even better than that. Like they can figure out the ways, and I mean we have built our houses, and they have gained that too much skill from just doing it practical rather than going to the colleges, or they haven't been to schools, or they're not that into that formal education system, but still they're very skillful, and they can live a very fulfilling life. They can do their stuff by themselves. I mean, few of my uncles woke up like 5 in the morning, and they have to milk the cows and go get the fodder, and then they have to look after the farming needs, towards the family as well, the responsibilities, and the working till 10 at night or 9 at night. But that job is so satisfying that they look forward, like in the morning, they wake up early in the morning, look forward to do that stuff. And when they're together, they enjoy their meal in the farms. That's more satisfying. And I mean, they have lived that life from 50-60 years, and they think that life. So the main aspect, or you could say like the main thing about people coming to the Western world is the Punjab is actually changing. I mean, the way people used to live is actually changing. Before, my uncles, they would share stuff within the community to just have another, like they would trade in the wheat and get some stuff from other families, or they would help others, and the material wasn't involved. They would do their job by themselves. They would look after the tools, farms, animals. They were into the nature, and they didn't have that pressure of formal education, or they have to do stuff. But once that industrialization or colonization came in, and that kind of led to people to be more materialistic and into the formal world, like children were taught to be in a certain path rather than being natural or free. They can be at more ease. Like I see my nephews and nieces going to the very well-known schools to learn French and these, so that it's easier for them to just go abroad and pursue their career. And doctors, engineers are thought as one of the skillful as compared to the farmers. But farmers are one of the, farming is one of the main occupation in Punjab that's feeding 65% of the world. Like, they're providing rice and wheat and all sort of cereals and grains. That's being noticed. It's changing, and then that greed has led to just polluting the soil. Like people are spraying chemicals, pesticides, and it's just more about production rather than living at that natural lifestyle before. And the milk is not consumable anymore, and they have started to practice very unethical farming techniques to just burn the hay, or so that they can get free of the land quickly. Like they can just harvest it quickly. So there's different techniques. It's all coming due to I guess there's a big factor of industrialization and the stuff they require from the what's that? I haven't got a word. Like it's from the big market. Like you need to get your groceries, like the natural normal day-to-day needs. You need to get from supermarkets. That there's money involved in it, so they have to be selfish, greedy, and they have to send their kids for a better financial condition in these countries.
Yesterday we were talking about cows, just how cows used to roam free, and there would be someone who goes with the cows, and how if it's a child, they learn from the animals. The way that your uncles grew up, and just by playing and learning, and then naturally becoming good machine operators, and they fix whatever breaks down, they fix on the spot. They're also have to be vets, essentially. They need to take care of the animals, and obviously they know everything about what it takes to cultivate wheat and rice and other vegetables. But as from their childhood, the way that village life used to be, where they were primarily supplying their own needs, as the pressure to grow things to make money increased, do you know how if it was an easy transition for them to move from that more traditional way of doing things to becoming producing to make money, and the pressure of money? Like, did they feel like there was a compromise that they had to make, and do they value the way that they think they need to educate their own children more than the education that they themselves had growing up?
I mean, it depends upon the governments and the rulers at that time. They kind of they feed that into the community. That's what led that big change. There's a wheat called Indian. It's called desi wheat. It's Indian wheat, and it's very small size. The grain is in small size, and the wheat now we're using is completely different, and it's way too rich in gluten, and it's lost all its natural properties. The wheat before in 1990s was totally different. It was small grain size, and that was naturally gluten free, and the milk they used to have was from Indian cows, the A2 milk. Like, they didn't have the Jersey cow, but as the production demand money came in, they brought the Jersey cows, and they have to give them because they get very sick and ill as well, the cows, because they are giving 20-30 liters of milk a day, as compared to the Indian cow, which would give like 5 or 6 liters, but that milk was way more nutrition, full of quality rather than just quantity. And they didn't need any medicine. They were just free animals, but there was no greed involved that time. But once that greed came in, so they had to bring that cows, and the milk consumption increased. They want to sell it to make money, and I think it's due to the education system was primarily like the government sector. People wouldn't value that education more as compared to what was in farms and stuff. But now these days, you have to pay almost like $2,000 per year for educating a child, which is a good amount of money back in India. Like, it's hard to earn. So they have their own consequences that led them to make this change. They never wanted. They missed that part. Like, they still remember. I talk to my father all the time, and they're coming back to that organic farming. They still want to come and get out of that rat race. I kind of talk a lot about this stuff. I have talked to the farmers from the south, as they have just 2 acres of land, and they're importing and exporting mushrooms, or they get a higher yield of different crops like capers, and they grow different stuff which doesn't even require insecticide, pesticide, and they give them more income. They can generate more income from the less quantity of land, and they're living a good life, successful life, rather than spraying pesticide, insecticide. But
I think that goes back to the question that I heard you ask, Bei, that this transition from subsistence and small scale, which represents 70% of food production, is not only sustainable in an ecological and economic context, but subsistence also enables peace and sovereignty, sense of freedom and sense of agency, that most dairy farmers in Australia are so up to here in debt that they have to keep overstocking the land in order to try and service the debt, which erodes the rivers and compacts the soil and sends everything backwards. So what monetary agriculture does is cancel out the clear observations that a human custodial approach to agriculture can have, where overstocking let's move somewhere else. And this is again with the aspect of the commons, or letting a field go fallow to recharge, to remanure, rather than just dose up the land with stock and with crops and just keep going because of the incarceration model that most farmers have been put into, which have seen many suicides in India, particularly when they went to GMO first up. And Vandana Shiva has been one of many Indian voices in this space to really... But Bei, I'm just thinking, like, you've stepped into... you've been a lawyer, and you've worked in what I would imagine is a corporate business, and your openness and willingness in more recent years to really question life across a whole range of areas, like your philosophical approach and your spiritual approach is very inspiring to me, to listen to your story. Where have you arrived in terms of economy? Like, where have you seen good examples of a healthy economy to people and to land?
So for most of my life I've lived in cities, and it's only in the past few years that I've spent more time in the countryside, or spent a lot of time on the road across the vast expanses of Australia. And what I have observed is that the relationship to land in Australia comes down to mining or agriculture, and agriculture is industrial agriculture, and that means that there's a heavy reliance on machines to produce agricultural goods here, and it's in stark contrast to what I witnessed in India, where there is much less machinery used and a much closer relationship to the land, even though what they're producing is still cash cropping. Now, that means that to be a farmer in Australia, you need to be a machine operator, first and foremost. And that intimacy is more there by necessity in a place like India. And in terms of sort of intimacy, how do we see ourselves as people? What is a human being? These questions go back so deep to the most basic, actually, because a sense of what we are as a human helps to dictate our relationship with everything around us, and land included, of course. So if your life is about surviving, and you need to survive to operate machines, what kind of relationship do you have with the land? An extractive one is often just where you need to go, or that's where your attention is. Not that there is not that aspect of, well, I really appreciate the spaciousness rather than the built up city life, but there is a kind of an intimacy that I think is possible from observing people who are practicing permaculture in Australia, but also the small organic farmers in India, that intimacy with land, it's not separate from us. I have rarely seen, and rarely have I seen land not exploited in an agricultural sense. So I cannot tell you, I mean, apart from seeing what you do, Patrick, and what Dave and Sue do, I haven't seen a shining example that has had an unbroken heritage going back generations with a linkage and respect and love for place, and an understanding of how their heritage and their ancestry is so linked in with the shape, size, the way the land is used, how that dynamic, the relationship, how we support the land and the land support us. I haven't seen that, but I've heard of one example. And that one example does come from India, Nashik actually, and it's of a Sikh woman from Kashmir actually, who has that sort of mystical, spiritual relationship with land, and she understands the how to cultivate, I guess, a kind of frequency. So the kinds of things that I've heard her do include using pearl as the mother to make apple cider vinegar, and how that produces a vinegar that isn't harsh on the system, which many apple cider vinegars are, even if they are organic, and her cultivation of spirulina. So the spirulina she produces during harvest time, her workers have to shower before they go into harvest, and they have 15 minutes to harvest before they have to come out and shower again. And the reason is because there's she does not want the workers to sweat and impact the I guess the frequency, the potency of the spirulina in its absolute natural form. And the way she processes it, she doesn't use artificial heating, it's just sunlight. And so it takes a lot of time for her to produce these spirulina supplements. But the consequence, so tasting the spirulina is like a very different experience to tasting organic spirulina bought at a health food store here. So what I'm aware of is where we can take this as humans.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because every story that we share, there's this sort of potential for the trigger, and wow, that sounds amazing. And at the same time, I would be precluded from that because I don't shower, because I want to be a participant in the flow of everything in life, and my microbiome is an extension of that. And so I feel like the sweat of humans who are forming this kelp or forming this medicine is contiguous. And so, so that's my trigger to that story. But at the same time, I've got to sit with that and go, well, I'm also not aware of what, my shower refusal means to other people. And I think it triggers other people. So, so it's just so fascinating. But I suppose what I was really also wanting to hear is what sort of market and what sort of economy is it? Subsistence, that economy, or is it for the market? And how does that very precious and intuitive and sensitive medicine, how does that then interact with is it just for her family or just for her village, or is it for a wider audience, a wider market? Yeah, so it's those sorts of things that I'm really kind of very pricking my ears to, because I think because I've seen time and time again small cottage industry with that amount of love and that amount of attention grow to a certain scale and then either kill the person because it's so much work to put that product into the market, or they have to go big, or whatever the neoliberal expression is, go big or get lost or something like that. So
I just have a feeling that there's a point where you just won't expand. Because it doesn't make sense to. Like, in fact, why would you live with an idea of endless expansion? There's just sort of taking what I would imagine to be the ways of, say, some amazing Ayurvedic doctors whom I met, and they produce all of their own medicine, and it's so potent. The way they do not operate on a commercial basis, not that they don't survive or that they don't survive well, but up to a certain scale, I just don't think they would do it. In fact, you can't even access the herbs. It's just not available on a bigger scale. And
that's what we talked about yesterday or last night, about just what it means to walk for our medicine, and to actually know the old plants as your ancestors and your ancestors and my ancestors knew. I'm just very aware that the three of us come from very different cultures. We're all very much privileged because of industrial schooling through universities. And in a way, this conversation is happening because we went to those industrial schoolings.
Exactly.
But at the same time, there's a consciousness for what we've lost.
Yes.
And I don't see that money is the total pollutant. It does, however, belong to an ideology of growth. You tend to have to grow money, but there are plenty of examples where people are in right relationship with their craft or their profession, and only, as you say, only grow it to that scale that feels good. And that's a kind of personal responsibility thing too, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wonder, because I mean, for example, being with your family, I get the sense that they have a very different way of being in life. They're very present. And I don't think you can rush Jashan's family. Like, I can't imagine rushing your dad or your mum. His mum makes the best Indian food that no one would ever be able to buy in any restaurant.
Come on.
And she, the time and care that she puts into the food contributes to the taste of the food. She's not going to be able to start at a restaurant and cook at that pace, or use those ingredients to be able to feed people who are willing to pay ridiculous amounts of money. It's just not available to them unless they know Jashan's mum. So I think so many things, as I've gone on my journey, so many of the most precious things in my life now, or what I've discovered and I now hold precious, are things that you can't buy. And why, you talk about the growth model, which I link to exploitation. Why growth? What's the need for growth if you're so content? What's the need for anything if you're so content? And we can live pretty simply.
But there's sometimes you need to, spread that in a community. Like, let's say Patrick holding a knowledge. I would love if Pat would spread this knowledge more and more. You know what I mean? Like, people are kind of aware about what's going on, and there's some sort. Like, my cousin, he's a herbalist, so he makes different formulas. Like, he knows where to extract natural gold, silver, or diamond. They add into their Ayurvedic medicine. But out in the market, there's let's say I am sick and I want a medicine, I would love to have a natural ingredient rather than any fake artificial stuff. So he knows where to get that extract. Why not expand that business?
Well, I think this is so important because it's not growth itself, it's growth in the exclusion of other things. So if you think about an ecological cycle, which may or may not start with birth, it may start with death, and then death and decay, and then renewal or birth, and then growth and consumption and competition, and then death and decay and renewal. So that growth and competition, which are so advanced in the, are so foregrounded in the dominant Western hegemony paradigm, that's the problem. It's not that growth is a problem or competition is a problem. It's just that they're foregrounded as the only thing in the market, that's worth attention to, and youth as well. So death and decay and eldership, all of these important things that enable renewal are diminished. And I think that's probably, explains our economic model. It corrupts the ecological cycle. It doesn't want to make gifts of return, whether that be a body dying or manure, human manure or animal manure. It just wants to sever the cycling.
In no way do I mean that as individuals with gifts to offer the world that we shouldn't offer it. All I'm saying is that there may be a point where we start to, rather than enjoy the process of giving and sharing and giving to the community our talents, greed comes in, or we start to industrialize it.
The government, let's say the government is trying to push farmers. It's not just farmers trying to pollute land and stuff. It's the higher people sitting up and they're putting farmers into debt and stuff like that, so that they have no choice rather than greed. They are already in that position. Like people want to be into organic farming. People want to be, but they're just stuck into that situation. They have to live to that expectation. And in India, I can't remember, like my father would be best answer to that question, like that situation, as he works with the wheat and rice. The prices haven't gone that higher, although farming is one of the main occupation in Punjab, and people need money for their survival, for their living, and the prices for that cash crops haven't gone high. So what else to expect? They need to increase their production, or they put into that situation so that they have to do that stuff, or they have to get a way to get a high production of milk rather than having a normal milk and just using it. If they are paid well for the same amount of milk or same amount of wheat, they would still be having 100 kg of wheat. Just an example from a small portion of land, rather than having 1000 kg of wheat, which is they want to just compensate for that money. They want that money from there, but that in that thing they lose the quality of that wheat. It's, I think, again the external force is pushing them to do that wrong thing. They are not that persons or people. They won't, because it's not impacting the outer world, it's impacting them too, because at the end we are feeding that wheat to our own cows, we are feeding that wheat to our own kids, and we are eating that own rice and spending a lot of money which we earn from that rice and wheat goes to doctors and pharmaceutical industries to just the cancer is rising, the diabetes is rising. It's just from the polluted land. The people would live a very happy life. There was less stress, less diseases, and people were more free. And
I'm aware that Woody's outside probably saying, come on, hurry up. So I thought we might just end with the last question. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I think we could go on all day actually, and we probably will. So out of what you have both independently witnessed and experienced in your lives so far, what is the beautiful world that you want to step into, that you want to create or be in service to? What do you want to be in service to? Like what is like burning for you to move towards right now?
I would say mental peace.
Mental peace.
Yeah, there's no peace left in that distracted world. Like in the city, you're always stressed and pressurized to just make up the stuff and pay stuff that doesn't even serve you happiness, and you are roaming around all the time, like just running around full of thoughts, and it doesn't allow you to just connect to yourself, or just to realize how precious that life is, what we are wasting for just running around for the money. And and we shouldn't be controlled by some higher powers or governments or whatever, whoever it is. Just we can live a free life rather than be stressed about debt and mortgages, bills and whatnot. And then you have to, that hustle in the city, and then that mental pressure. A lot of people just don't come up, and they have the amount of wealth, car, houses, big luxury, everything, but still very they're not fulfilled from inside, very lonely and stressed and anxious, and there's no happiness, and there's no movement, there's no richness to life. They didn't get time to spend with their family. I used to work for one of the construction industry, and I was traveling back from Dromana with the boss of that company, the owner, and I was talking to him. He was out for a week to just do some construction job, and he's like, Jashan, I got all the money. I got 2 big houses, like 3 million each, and I got big cars. My kid goes to this school, he plays this and this. My daughter is this. We own 6 cars and whatnot. He named it, and the idea of wealth fascinated me. I'm like, oh wow, that would be good. But in 10-15 minutes, he started to cry, and I'm like, what happened? He's like, you guys have the best life. You guys, 3 of you come in the morning and work here, but you laugh all day around. I miss that family feel. I miss my kids. I'm out away from them for a week, and he feels that this. So I feel that's missing, and people need to relax a bit and slow down. With the nature doesn't rush, and life is meant to be easy than to be hard on ourselves. And I guess the priority should be our happiness and richness in life, rather than just chasing the wealth which doesn't serve us anything.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So the stuckness or the misery that Jashan describes, that's in many ways what I come from and where my family comes from. And if that's been life for a few generations, you don't really know joy. And the fabric of the community, or even within your own family, the bond is so shattered that you don't even trust each other. So it's a very isolating place to be for each family member, even though you are from a family. And so for me, where I come from, and I think for a lot of others too, when you don't know joy and you don't have or never experienced how good real bonds can be, you don't know what's possible. And so it's easy to fall into that life that reinforces separateness, and money can give you a lot of power to do a lot of things, and that may be the only thing that you derive pleasure from or some joy from. And I think that was certainly the case for me, and it was the case in my culture or in my community with my family. So if the more powerful I was in the sort of positions that I was in, and the more money I made, the happier they became with me. So if that's what makes them happy, then I was encouraged to do more of that. And a lot of this journey has been about understanding my own humanness and what has been missing, and the pain that came with reflecting on the loss for so many generations of a very beautiful life that is right before us if we can let our guard down and heal some of our own pain, the times when we had needs that our family could not be there for, or friends who just didn't know, or so to be able to heal ourselves enough. I guess I wonder if there are more people out there who are willing to reflect on the hard things, the harder feelings that we harbor, and reach a point of acceptance and more wholeness within themselves, so that we can be with each other in a accepting way. I would say that a lot of people are wounded, or most of us are wounded somehow, and rather than keeping a distance for our own protection, can we not protect ourselves and just be vulnerable with each other? I think it would be lovely to be able to be with people, and for the many, many, many who have had pretty tumultuous recent ancestral histories, can we not repeat our parents' and our grandparents' past, and can we build something together? I think that would be a really beautiful thing to live for or hope for.
It sounds like you're very much on that journey. Yeah. And you know what you're moving away from, and you know where you are now, but where you're heading to is hard to describe, except for the feeling and the longing that you're trusting in yourself. Yeah,
That's true.
I feel very close to that. And, all right, thank you both
Thank you
so much
you.
for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, yeah, much love.
Old bird, you and I are brothers, bonded by earth and wood. Old crow, you and I are sisters, swimming in a bowl of blood. Old friend, you and I were strangers, living by a restless sea. Friend, I knew when the wind blew that you were calling me, and we bought our time, and we shed our skins, and we shake our bones, and we sink like stone, and we cross through mud till we reach the sky, and we bide our time. Bide our time, and we shed our skins, and we shake our bones, and we sink like stone, and we crawl through mud till we reach the sky, and we bide our time, and we bide our time, and we shed our skins, and we shake our bones, and we sink like stone, and we crawl through mud till we reach the sky, and we bide our time.